We get on and continue this conversation. 507, what are you having for tonight?
I got a little bit of vodka, a little bit of cranberry, keeping it simple. Keeping it simple.
Me personally, I got myself a couple cans of Mike's Harder lemonade because I love my liquor. Our two designated drivers will not be drinking, obviously. And yeah. Alright, so we last left off on what was that Microsoft app called again and PlayStation Now?
Xbox Game Pass.
Yes, Game Pass and PlayStation Now. Say that one more time, Sean.
Game Pass is very good about the entire point of the game. And also, essentially,
Uh-huh. Right. Give me 1 second, and someone else can continue on.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't firsthand got to deal with Xbox Game Pass at the moment, but it does sound pretty cool. It sounds a lot better than PlayStation Now, and that's probably why I haven't touched it at the current moment, because PlayStation Now is pretty sucky compared to Xbox Game Pass. So I really don't know how to jump in it. But obviously, I don't even own an Xbox at the current moment, just because Sony was kicking Microsoft's ass at the beginning of this console war. But it's still sounding more. It sounds more impressive than what Sony's got going on, like PSN. You know, just especially with another service on top of what you're paying for $60, $56 a year for PlayStation Now or PlayStation Plus, added on another subscription that doesn't sound great. Nobody wants to do that. We're all trying to save money nowadays. And between your Netflix, your Hulu, your Apple Music, your Google Music, your YouTube subscriptions, you're really not trying to.
Oh wait. Hold on, Sean. Give me 1 second. Your voice isn't coming up on the stream right now.
Oh, does he have
He has to share his voice.
Yeah, okay. So let me tell you how to do that real quick. So click the share button. Go to sharing and broadcast settings.
I'm pretty sure you're gonna try to cut this out too, right?
Yeah, I can. So click the share button on your controller, and then go to sharing and broadcast settings, and then in audio sharing settings, check mark share play audio. I'm also getting, David, are you buying something currently? I'm getting a lot of feedback as well.
Say that again?
Are you buying something? I'm getting kind of a lot of feedback as well, like a fan or something potentially.
It's the air conditioner. I'll turn it off for now.
If you just step away from it, I'm sure that would be good. I can kind of just hear
I can't. That's why I'm gonna turn it off.
Oh, okay. Because I thought it was Ryan. Might be Ryan. You can.
Also, Sean, if you can turn up your mic a little bit, unless it's already at the max level.
See. Check 1, 2, 3%.
Okay.
Say that one more time.
Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Your
So
voice is cutting out a little bit.
why is it chipping so much? Is it due to the party itself?
I'm not too sure.
Okay. Because I'm wondering if it's the party and the connections and all the voices it's trying to pick up. So hold on, let's try a new party real quick.
Okay.
Invite me.
I will. Alrighty. Now I'm going to invite these guys. He'll take a lot of bottle. Okay, you already asked Sean in it, so I'm gonna join him.
Ooh, there we go.
Okay, so that's better.
Okay, yeah, Sean, talk for a little bit, just like so we can.
Do you need me to send you the link, or do you have my channel already?
Testing.
Say the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plane.
How about I just say a full sentence? Because that shit sounds really difficult to say, and I've already forgotten.
You came in crystal clear.
So you're watching the stream, is what you're saying?
Do I need to?
That's better for me, so I don't have to do it. But yeah.
Alright. I got you.
But yeah. I think we're all good. Ryan.
Yeah.
Cool.
This has been a trying time going into this, but let's go ahead and I guess jump straight into E3 here and kind of just talk about the basics. We'll just kind of talk a little bit about Sony's absence and EA's absence, which I didn't even know about, so I guess nobody really cared about that.
Yes, we're gonna have Sean Effect on more of 2019's E3, as I'll just be trying to cover the past.
Okay, wait, yeah, that's good with me. If you want to go ahead and kind of talk about the past E3 leading up to 2019, and we can feel free to chime in,
right, the more important ones that I feel like dealing with between Microsoft and Sony mainly.
Yeah, all right. Well,
right, cool.
If you're still recording, you can go ahead and just go in.
All right, cool. All right, and we're just gonna jump right in to. Okay, we're gonna jump right into E3, the past E3s, starting with 2012. This is the year before Sony kind of took over in gaming. Microsoft is still big at this point. E3 2012, let's pull this up here. And Microsoft was doing pretty decent at this point. This conference, they were showing footage of Halo 4, Black Ops 2, Resident Evil 6, even though that kind of flunked. But there's also Tomb Raider, Forza Horizon, South Park, Stick of Truth, Ascend, New Gods, and Loco Cycle. Not sure of these last two. And
Come out, do those exist?
right. And then we're looking over here at Sony's side, 2012, June 4th, 6 p.m. We got God of War Ascension, PlayStation All Stars, The Last of Us. That's a big one, probably the biggest one of this list. Assassin's Creed 3, Far Cry 3. They also announced Beyond Two Souls. You know, even though it flunked again, but these were good-looking games for Sony's side, and also pretty good-looking games for Microsoft too. Do we want to go over anyone else for 2012, or are we good on here?
I think the only thing I want to mention is this was the last year Nintendo was there, so Nintendo hasn't been. Yeah, because they did a Nintendo Direct, which is what they have been doing for the past couple of years in 2013, I see here.
Right.
So yeah, this was a big one, because this was the last one Nintendo actually did they always go last typically in the lineup. They typically have like a 9 a.m. conference, which is pretty big, for them. So going into 2013, just to preface it a little bit.
Oh boy.
That, and then Nintendo was saying, hey, we're not going to be at E3, we're going to do our little Nintendo Direct thing, and obviously you were still going to get some Nintendo news, but it wasn't going to be a big conference, and people were pretty upset about it, as that led into continuous news about the upcoming Xbox and the upcoming PlayStation 4. But David, I'll let you take it from there to tell us about my favorite year in video games.
Oh boy, here we go. I might need to get a can of this drink already, because man, 2013, I mean, safe to say that Sony took the show. Alright, but we're gonna go down to the lineup, starting with first Microsoft. Now, Microsoft, this was supposed to be a big year for them, alright? This is the year that the Xbox One got announced. But the announcement part, I mean, it's an understatement to say at this point, like, they fell short of this conference because of this announcement. I mean, so many things went wrong. First, I mean,
everything.
The advertisement, man, like
what went right for them?
Like, it's easier to say what went right. You know, like, is so, like, their marketing for the Xbox One was so TV based and sports focused. It made no sense to gamers, like, why you would even want to buy this console.
They're trying to make what TVs are today without realizing that I don't need an Xbox when my TV does everything that you're trying to push it to be.
Right.
That was also before Phil Spencer took over, when they were working with House of Money and thought that basically, you know what the real biggest problem was? I mean, you know, the whole being bitchy about DRM and not wanting to have used games be played. Again, the thought process is correct, but it was about 5 years earlier than it should have been. But the problem that they ran into is trying to forcibly bundle the Kinect, which was already, you know, a widely detested piece of technology, and it wasn't good. It's not like it got better. It was just as trash as it was before. And because they packaged that in there, they shoved another $100 on there, and they were like, "Yeah, you'll buy it," and no one did. And that was their big problem, is they didn't realize, for some reason, their hubris got ahead of them. You know, Evan, I constantly bicker back and forth with your brother because he likes to bring up the PlayStation technically sold more PS3s than 360. Shut the hell up. You want to know what? Okay, Microsoft is working with Japan buying no Xboxes and still wipe the fucking floor with Sony.
True. I can't even argue with that.
Yeah,
it did even out for that generation, but we all know Microsoft won that generation against PS3.
Well, they won the generation because they had a better lineup of games. They offered a more streamlined system. It was cheaper. Those are the two major things were it was a cheaper game system, and it had a better library.
Oh yeah.
And they until God of War 3, they didn't have a good God of War game on PS3. It took them how long to release a Gran Turismo? It took them how long to get Last of Us? I mean, looking up to 2010. Tell me what the title that I need to get a PS3 for. So go ahead. Can you think of one? Meanwhile, Microsoft is pumping out Mass Effect, the Halo series, Gears of War. I mean, they mopped them up.
While still running a Call of Duty series, mind you. That's a big one too.
Well, and
Exactly.
but I mean, Call of
Exactly.
Duty was still on both systems, and so was Battlefield. But the thing is, the Xbox Live network was a bigger thing, going from the Xbox to the 360. You had some people that did actually pay for Xbox Live and use it, so it was more known, it was more pushed. Whereas the PS2, there was no, did it have it? Yeah, but no one used it.
Yeah.
When the PS3 comes out, when the PS3 costs as much as a damn house computer, and all of a sudden, you're looking at going, well, I don't need a Blu-ray player. I don't buy anything Blu-ray. Hell, I don't even know if Blu-ray is going to be the standard. What if HD becomes the standard? So I'm just going to get a 360 that's like what, 100, 150 bucks cheaper. I'm going to go with that.
Oh
I mean,
man.
it was a no-brainer. And then they flipped roles because Microsoft thought, well, we can sell our system with this extra piece of forcible technology, and people will buy it because this is the wave of the future. And again, everything they predicted is correct. The problem is that before Phil Spencer, they did it all wrong. They were correct that people don't give a shit about used games. I don't care to buy physical media. I'd much prefer digital media. It's a license either way you look at it. I mean,
Not with Stadia.
We'll get on to Stadia a little later, but
Can we just go ahead and just point this out real quick? And I know you said we'll talk about it later, but I'm going to talk about it now because it's fun. I look forward to playing Stadia with my Google Glass because if there's anything Google's good at, it's staying true with technology. They never give up on anything they start. That thing will be a collector's item for people who like to collect brand new technology within 2 years of it coming out. Because that thing's going to be an abject flop.
And I agree with that. And I mean, Google just is a fantastic company, but just has a horrific track record with this is our new product. This is our new software or something. How do, can we get people to buy into it? Because since we're Google, we can do it the best, right? Wrong. Google Plus, failure. Google Nexus phones, failure. Google Glass, failure. Like, the list just is insane.
How about you unfuck YouTube? That'd be nice. All your time finding a way to get both of the Paul brothers to just accidentally die or something.
Jesus, man.
Do something positive. Look, there's some people in this world that if they just kind of didn't exist, the world would be better. Both of them are in that category.
We here at the Blacklight Tavern don't condone violence, but
At all.
nobody here is subscribed to either one of the Paul brothers.
Hey.
I'm not saying anyone actively killed them. I'm saying that if we happen to go to the Japanese suicide forest and see that gremlin hanging there, so be it.
Jesus Christ, man.
Wow. God, I was hard on the tech.
I gotta take a sip of the drink on that one.
Oh yeah, where's my lemonade, dude? Jesus. Man.
That's a big sip.
I think the point to make there for the hardware position is simply Xbox with the previous management made a gamble, and that gamble was incorrect. And they would have been spot on if they were Sony making TVs. I mean, they would have been spot on if they'd waited 5 years. Because if you, I mean, how often do you guys go on PlayStation Store and it's all of a sudden it's like lightning sale? Well, I'm gonna go look.
Right.
I mean,
True.
they just looked at the Steam model and went, why the hell are we sitting here with all these $60 games that just aren't moving product when if we just drop it down to 20, we'll sell an extra 4,000 copies.
There you go.
Like Call of Cthulhu is a game that I really wanted to play, and it's not worth $60, but it was worth the 20 that I spent. Yeah, and how? I mean, but then you have the counter to it, where you're looking at something like Fallout 76 dropping half price within 7 days of coming out, and that's becoming a massive problem for some of these games where they're, especially live service games, where they need a player base to survive and to exist at all. And so in order to do that, they have to just kind of cut their price whenever possible. But then again, Anthem is the counter to that, because this is the first time it's been on legitimate sale since they're released, and it's garbage. Like, you've got to be able to pace it correctly. Like Red Dead Redemption, its standard edition has been on sale, I think, twice since it came out, and that's because it retained its value, and that's fine.
Still a pretty good game.
Balance. You got to be able to find the balance with it. Live service games are going to go on sale all the time because they need player base.
Right.
Games or games that have multiplayer but don't desperately need it. Like Call of Duty does need a desperate player base, especially now with its numbers plummeting. And so it puts Black Ops 4 on sale just immediately. I mean, I saw it all the way down to $20 and $30 within 2 or 3 weeks of launch.
Sad.
Both a good and a bad thing. Because
So,
hold your money nowadays, basically.
as you were saying that, something you kind of struck a chord with me when you're kind of asking like off the top of your head, come up with a game in which you need to essentially have a PS3 for at the time, when it essentially came out. And when it first came out, there's nothing, as there is with most consoles that first drop. But when it starts to kind of get into the meat of the years, and I'm looking at you go to Metacritic right now and type in what are the best 100 games for the PlayStation, which should give you a pretty good idea. I'm seeing maybe 3 or 4 games, maybe 5 at best. And
Before 2010.
Before 2010, not much. If you're into it, Little Big Planet.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Was successful. You do have Heavy Rain was specific to Sony at the time.
You named 2 specific niche games.
Absolutely. And that's.
You're not going to sell a system. I mean, we're talking about new systems coming out next year, which things pretty obvious that they'll come out next year. PS5 has to drop something because Microsoft is going to come with Halo. And I do not doubt that they're going to go, oh yeah, all the systems come with it pre-installed and it's on Game Pass. Have at it. Because what they need is player base. And if they say you get Halo Infinite with the system and it's on Game Pass, a job. Like that immediately, you're playing it on Xbox One or whatever their next system is, Project Scarlet right now. What does Sony have to counter with that? Oh, we have Last of Us 2. I mean, I know we released it 8 months ago on the most widely owned system in the world, but
Right, exactly. That's not really gonna sell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not. And so that leaves you at that point where Game Pass itself, with anyone that owns an Xbox, you already know what you're getting with it. They're gonna continue pumping stuff on it. So you know that with your monthly payment, or if you're in my case, I just pay it for the year. So you know that you're just getting massive value for what you're paying right off the bat, and you don't need to physically buy a game unless you really want it because you have all these options to play. Where with Sony, they're working with house money because they've already got Japan on lock, and the entire continent does not even play Xbox. So
Right.
they're working with that house money, but in the U.S., if they don't have a dedicated shooter, they don't have a dedicated battle royale game or anything with name recognition. Honestly, God of War is great and it's going to sell a lot, but it's not going to get people to play beyond the year it comes out. Halo is still played today. It's still one of the most widely played games online.
Mm-hmm.
Skyrim is one of the most widely played games online.
Mm-hmm.
These are facts. And Sony has to have a counter to that because Microsoft is going to purposely screw them as hard as they got screwed last time.
Oh yeah, and I like how you brought that up.
You're going to have a discless Xbox or Project Star, whatever the hell it's called. You're going to have a discless version of that console, and it's going to be $100 cheaper at minimum than whatever Sony rolls with because they're not going to make a discless option.
Right. I like how you say that you brought up the fact that Microsoft is going to try to screw Sony over because I feel like looking back at E3, both sides are going to need to take notes on what to do next, especially Microsoft because they pretty much, we all know they took the L that year. But I mean, Sony, they capitalized on a weakness and then made that running for a pretty good while in a boost of sales.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but look at how much money Microsoft has thrown around to pick up all of these really well-liked studios. I mean, like Hellblade's New Sacrifice. That was originally just on PlayStation. Then it moves over to Xbox. They throw it on Game Pass. And they're like, oh, also we bought this studio. And now they're making a brand new IP for us.
Right.
These are massive flexes that they're pulling. And they have a purpose. And that purpose is simply, we have an unlimited budget. We have fuck you money. You don't. Sony's
That's what it comes
most,
down to.
Well, Sony's most profitable venture is PlayStation. Their TVs are overpriced junk. If you've ever seen any of the X-Men movies in the last 20 years, they're
Ooh,
shit.
don't go there.
Please don't.
I just saw Dark Phoenix a week and a half ago.
I already knew I wasn't gonna watch that movie, so
that's a whole different podcast.
right.
You know what? Let's go ahead and move to this one then. Which was worse, Dark Phoenix or the final season of Game of Thrones? And go.
I would like to throw in the mystery guest third option of the Amazing Spider-Man series.
Yes, a random challenger appeared.
You mean the Amazing Spooderman?
Oh my! Oh man! Oh, this is great.
All I'm gonna say about that dog shit series is very simply their first enemy they went with was Blizzard. That's already some weakness. Second, and just even better, how did old girl die by tappity tapping her head right on the ground? Man, you better just drown yourself in a pool. You are.
Spoiler alert for the people who didn't watch that trash movie, by the way.
Spoiler alert.
Hey. Just in case you want to watch that garbage.
Oh, I'm so sorry that they killed off the girl whose name you don't even remember now.
You know what? You know what? I'm drawing a blank as you say.
The actor's name or Gwen Stacy? Yeah.
Right, Gwen Stacy. Right.
The most relevant she's been is when they decided to make her into a female Deadpool because of ran out of ideas. but I digress.
Oh man.
The crazy thing is that's not even her. She don't even get that.
Yeah. I think that to round it back, to bring this back to home plate, I think the main thing to look at here is that Microsoft has spent since Phil Spencer took over a couple of years ago, they've been focused, dead sight focused on, okay, if we're not going to beat them in the exclusive market, that just ain't going to happen. And that's fine. So what they've decided is they're going to go with the service-based market, and they're going to push heavily on making it a streamlined, easier way to handle everything. But I know you don't own an Xbox, but you know how much easier it is to play on Mixer, to share anything. It's so much easier to do on Xbox than on PlayStation. They have not. I owned a PlayStation year one. They haven't fixed shit on this UI.
Oh.
This UI is a disaster.
And to kind of go off of that, the UI. I can't even say that this UI is a disaster on the PS4. This is the exact same UI from PlayStation 3. It's the exact same thing.
And the thing is, the Xbox One's UI has changed 3 times, and it's currently in a fantastic state. If I want to be able to share and record or stream, it's just boom, 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 3 steps, real easy. And I can change the title, I can put comments on, read, whatever. I can do any of those things I want right out here. If I want to watch someone streaming on Mixer, boom, I can just click the right bumper twice, boom, I'm on Mixer and I can do whatever. It's so much more streamlined and easier to get through, and Sony has kept this convoluted mess of a UI. And it's been almost a decade and they haven't touched the PS4's UI once.
And this is just the extended version of the cross media bar, the XMB. Because I mean, this is the exact same thing that you saw on PS3 on your PlayStation Portable. If you had the chance to have one, it's the exact same thing. It's
same thing.
Extended. Yep.
Oh, and I really appreciate that it plays that damn music in the background coming in an elevator.
Oh
So
no,
you
I have
can't
to
turn
turn
it
mine
off?
off. No, you can turn it off. The background music for the settings. I forgot what setting I went into, but man, you can turn it off. I definitely never had that on again. Trust me, like
Settings, sound and screen, system music.
Yep. Settings, sound and screen.
Sound and screen. System music.
Settings what?
Settings to sound and screen.
And then system music.
Sound and screen.
Oh boy. Well, this is adding on to the convoluted cross menu bar for PlayStation. I cannot agree with the fact that it's been better. It's pretty much the same. It's a little.
How did they make a worse UI than Windows 10?
Ooh, I don't know about that. Because as bad as it is, at the end of the day, it's just 2 straight lines. Like, it's bad.
I mean, if you think about it, PlayStation's UI is 1 straight line. So, I mean,
Windows 10 is the biggest nightmare I have ever had to deal with. Every time I open up my computer, whether it's my work computer or it's my personal computer, I'm like, I actually don't know how to do what I want to do right now. That is insanely frustrating.
Windows has changed so much.
All I know is that PlayStation 4's UI is the Sonic Team Racing.
Jesus Christ. All right.
You know that meme with the button where it's like upgrade, go back. Yeah, that's literally
go back.
Windows 7, it's like upgrade that. Windows 8, wait. Windows 10, go back.
Oh man, all right. So to kind of briefly go over the past year before we finally move on, Sony just kind of they just went off of an upset. I mean, Microsoft went bad with marketing, and they just kind of one up them. Like, oh, well, you guys are making $500 for a console. Well, we're just gonna make it $400. Boom, and we can play used games. Boom. That's all they needed to say in that conference, and they just won over every single person in that crowd, honestly. And I mean, if you look it up to date right now, I mean, PS4 is selling at least twice the amount that Xbox One is selling, if I remember it correctly. And I mean,
It's even worse than that. Even I think it might be 3 times.
almost
It's getting
3
close to
times.
3. I think it's 41 to 91 currently.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Million.
and it's been years. It's been years. All right. I don't know what happened with Microsoft. They made some improvements. I mean, even back in 2015, and this is a big one for me because I love PlayStation games for this, except the PlayStation 4, and Microsoft just added backwards compatibility. 2015. Xbox, I believe, like the original Xbox. I know for damn sure that Xbox 360. Anyone can comment if I'm wrong, but the Xbox One can play like the original Xbox and the Xbox 360 games, right?
I think it was select titles at first, if I'm not mistaken.
Select titles is better than none.
The no titles. Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, you can argue that these PlayStation classics, but for one, you gotta buy it again at like some of these go up to $15. These old like
Like I can find the game on eBay for 2.
for $2, literally with no shipping, $2. All right, there should be no reason why I gotta pay $3 for GTA 3 when that thing came out. That came out in 2001, like the pretty much the starter PlayStation 2. Why am I paying $15 for that old busted? I still can't jump and sprint at the same time busted game. All right, like it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Well, see, that's why you're heading towards the direction that Microsoft is already ahead of the game. Is because your best option, and Sony is really screwed here because they have such a library to work with, and I'll also point out that Nintendo is screwing up because if you have a Switch and you have their online availability, that's fine. But the little bonus like, oh, you can use Nintendo Classics. They ain't got dog shit on there to play. No one gives a shit about. And that's the same problem for Sony. There's no reason that I should be paying $10 or $15 a month, and I don't get to play your classics.
Oh no! I'm talking about like the actual like. So this section in PlayStation Classic, you can buy the full game, but you still have to pay $15 for each one, which makes no sense.
Right. What I'm saying is it ropes into the same thing. All of those should be on their version of Game Pass with the option to buy for like $7.99. Because for me, $8 is more than acceptable price. Because 5 is too little and 10 is too much. About $8 with the occasional $15 one like Final Fantasy VII. Because anyone that wants to really play that, I can buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And those things need to be available on a month-to-month service that you pay for. Like if you want to play Jak and Daxter, boom, play Jak and Daxter. Do all of these things that people want to be able to play. All of the God of War series. I should be able to play every single damn God of War game on here for just $10 a month. And that's the direction that they're going to be forced to go. But they're so protective of their IPs that they're hurting themselves without realizing that they're hurting themselves because they make all of the profit on those game sales, and they're not recognizing that they're making hand over fist alone with how much they charge for to be able to play online and have their own first party titles.
Right.
Why didn't why didn't God of War come with God of War 1, 2, and 3 automatically for the entire damn series? Like, here, pre-order this and you get all of these. Anything. They don't. The problem with Sony, and this isn't dating back to the PS3, is they don't want to give anything. They don't want you to get anything without them getting a dollar out of it. And Microsoft is looking at it going, look, yeah, you're paying us for a service, but we're giving you all of these legitimate titles. Just Cause, was it Just Cause 4 that came out?
Right.
4.
Just Cause 4 hit Game Pass within 30 days. Right offline. Now, do I think Just Cause 4 is a good game? Hell no. But can I attach a fucking cow to a window? Yes. Did I install it and dick around with it for an hour or 3? Yeah, of course. But that's the point. But I did play the entire Tomb Raider series on Game Pass. They have 2 of the 3 on there. The first remake and then Rise Up. They did have Shadow of the Tomb Raider on there for about 2 months. So if you want to play the entire trilogy, you could play the entire trilogy for, it would have been $20 between the 2 months. So which do you want to do? Do you want to spend, $100, $120, play all 3, or here's 20? That's the issue that someone's going to be running into from here on. Because there's no reason. I'm out of interest for what we're talking about. I went on here to look at their store, and my God, do they have the cojones to sit here and say that they have a deal? Here's your deals. Half of them are free because it's for Fortnite and Dauntless. No one cares. Monster Hunter World currently is on Game Pass free.
Oh man, just ripping into this company, dude. Oh boy.
This one was my favorite, especially because your brother Julian, Evan, your brother, he hit me up at work and he said, "Hey, Borderlands Handsome Collection is on PlayStation Plus." I was like, "Cool, it's on Game Pass." Been on Game Pass. Played it. Because my company is sucking way more dick than yours right now. And
I gotta throw out personally that for anybody here, if you have not bought Borderlands and you waited just now to get it free on PlayStation Plus, or even if you played it on Game Pass and that was like your first time playing it, you are way too late to the party. Like, that's like somebody waking up today and being like, Donald Trump is president? Like you're extremely late.
Oh yeah.
Borderlands has been on every single modern console to date and for cheap. That game has not been $60. It has not been anywhere close to full price in years. So
Ultimate Collection has been hard to find in stores. It does run like 50 or 60 on the storefront itself. So I mean, it's more of like the hard to find situation. But dude, it's free game to play.
Free forever, mind you.
Right.
That's crazy. As long as you have Game Pass in that instance, correct? Because it's not an actual. It's similar to Google, the Stadia in that instance, where you don't necessarily have the license, but as long as you're paying for Game Pass, you can play that game at any point in time, correct?
Yeah, as long as it's on Game Pass and you have Game Pass, which there's no reason not to when you're getting Game Pass. You're getting Gold and Game Pass for 15 instead of just Gold for 10. So there's no reason to not have Game Pass. They're integrating it completely. That's the whole point. And even if it costs a little bit more for me to have Game Pass along with it, it's still going to be worth it because they're going to have so many things on there.
Absolutely, because the value and content that you're getting for $10 a month is outweighs everything. So, that's why I can see that. Yeah, it's very legit.
All right. And before we move on to what is it, 2019? Any final comments?
Nintendo won.
Yeah, well, we can kind of start there. But yeah, just kind of going on 2019, but yeah, Nintendo definitely won E3 this year.
Really?
Clear, absolute clear winners in my just based off of game lineup. Like Microsoft, don't get me wrong, Microsoft did extremely well. Compared to everybody else, though, Nintendo, look, Dragon Quest XI, sequel to the newest Legend of Zelda game, Luigi's Mansion 3, which nobody asked for, but everybody will buy. Pokemon Sword and Shield. We're talking about our first legit Pokemon game since like Pokemon Stadium coming to a major console. That's gonna be wild. And Animal Crossing New Horizons. People are about to lose their shit.
But I mean, Keanu Reeves though, right? Because his name
Keanu Reeves is pretty cool.
Was, you know, he gave a speech that people liked. You know, he's kind of hot right now.
Now look, I love me some Neo, and I am head over heels for Cyberpunk. Don't get me wrong, but we need you to realize that Banjo-Kazooie is a god.
Let's get that out the way. Get that out the way.
That is one of the greatest games I've ever played in my entire existence, Banjo-Kazooie. And for them to be able, because by the way, Microsoft owns Banjo-Kazooie, so
Right.
that had to be part of the working relationship Microsoft was making with Nintendo, and that was a huge rumor that was going on. For them to actually get Banjo-Kazooie into there, it means the possibility of getting a Banjo-Kazooie game, a brand new game, is huge. It's true, because Smash is the most played fighting game in the world.
Right. I mean,
I love Mortal Kombat, but Smash is Smash.
Smash has had, and before we go on, like Evo, okay, biggest fighting game tournament ever, every year, right? Smash has consistently had 2 game lineups for X amount of years. Okay, they had Melee, right? And I just thought like Melee just got discontinued for tournaments, but no, people are really still out here playing Melee from 2000 and when that game is worse than Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Okay, like instead of when's Marvel, it's when Smash. All right, and now you got Smash 4 just completely taking over the scene, and it's ridiculous. And it makes sense because, you know, Smash is popular. It's a lot of toxic people, you know, good competition, hype people, you know, a lot of rumors about gamers smelling and not take showers and all that. You know, Smash is popular. But before we continue on with games, I just wanted to ask you guys quickly about Sony's absence this year, because it's gonna have to come up. So, how do you guys feel about that?
If it's a business decision, which I'm assuming it is, I guess I get it, because I mean, you don't want to show up to E3 empty-handed, which they probably were about to do, which would have looked extremely bad, because, you know, it's easier to just let Microsoft get around on you and then try to come back next year. It would be worse if you do show up to E3 and then you get your ass kicked compared to what you did back in 2013. So obviously, I think E3 was extremely different without their absence. I think you had said earlier that the attendance difference was 3,000 to 5,000, which is big. So like E3 was very different without them. Their presence was extremely missed, and I think Microsoft kind of missed the competition. I think everybody did to some extent, but I'm interested to see what exactly this means for them in the future. If they're trying to get away from E3, which is kind of what all the big three, all big three ones have been trying to do, or if it was just a year of, hey, we don't have much that we want to bring to the table. We're not going to try to milk this. We'll be back when it's time. You know, that's bring some information to the Tokyo Gaming Show in September, or if it's we'll bring some information out at the Video Game Awards in the winter, or potentially wait for something else, or potentially hold their own conference, which is probably the route that they'll go. But I think we'll see a big return for them next E3.
Right, I definitely agree with that, but even before E3, the crunch time for all these big game companies for right now is February 2020. Now, this is where usually around this time all the big reveals for systems and such and whatever games are going to be released with it come out. Okay, so it's gonna be hard on Sony to keep this lead. They haven't had it for a while, you know. Like the PS3 versus 360 war was rough on them. They finally took this lead. It's been what, 6 years. They gotta figure out something, and I hope that Sony stayed away to try to keep this lead. But go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I think the lead is starting to switch, starting to go kind of more in Microsoft's favor at this moment in time. And it's kind of weird because if you compare it to that last console generation where Microsoft started off like fire and then kind of cooled down towards the end of that life, and then tried to get a jump start on the next generation, we're kind of seeing like the exact opposite, where Sony got the good jump start this time, has obviously sold more than double the units that they have, and has kind of come out on top as the superior console, outselling both the Xbox One and then the Nintendo Switch and the Wii U combined still. Even though the Switch is hot, no shade to the Switch. Switch is great at the current moment. But you know, if we're just talking about in terms of sales, they're kicking butt. But we're talking about content and where they're heading to. You know, Game Pass is the future for Microsoft, and they're kicking butt with it. You know, we talked about the content, we talked about the pricing structure of it. Seems pretty solid compared to PlayStation Now. It's never really taken off.
Right.
We don't have much information about the PlayStation 5, and then Sony doesn't show up to E3 this year. Sony doesn't really have much going on. So to me, that tide is starting to kind of turn as we start to walk into the ending stages of this would be the 8th generation of consoles, as we start talking about Project Scarlet and the potential PlayStation 5.
And the Google stuff too.
And
the main thing you touched on that is extremely accurate is right now it feels like Microsoft has a Marvel type plan. They've got this idea. Here's what we're doing. We're going to be doing this and building upon it. It's the foundation to working with. Sony's entire basis is we have single player games that are good. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but what else do we have? We have really single player games. Okay, I played God of War, I beat it, it's done. What else do you have? Well, have you tried playing God of War? Like, they don't and that's the issue. Because you can sell, look at it this way, and I'm strictly speaking from a business sense. God of War sells 17 million copies. How many people are buying it after that first year? Basically
No one.
Basically no one. So it's sitting there making nothing essentially. Why would you not put that on a premium service that you have for people to play, and then release multiple types of DLC that you may be able to play along with? That's where you make that extra buck. That's where you bring something that has lost its value, because whatever the this is a fact. Games make the majority of their sales the first week they come out. That is, I believe it's north of 70% of their sales. So if almost all of your sales are coming in the first 7 days, then why do you still have it as a full-price game 6 months later? You're wasting your time. People are not buying it. Do something because you keep hearing from Microsoft, which for Gears of War tired and done, sure, but you know what? It still has a player base of a couple million people that play it, and they still make a shitload of money through everything that they offer within the game. Halo's gonna be the same way. If they're gonna come out and give you Halo to play, you're damn right they're gonna sell you a bunch of cosmetic bullshit. And that's fine. Cosmetics are cosmetics. I don't care. I just don't want a loot box. I just avoid loot boxes. Hate loot boxes. Let me just buy the Hayabusa helmet. That's all I want to do.
These loot boxes, man.
Sony does not have a counterpunch to Game Pass, to live service gaming, which is where we're at. We're in the always online market, whether you want to be or not. You gotta remember, it's not just Call of Duty, it's not just Fortnite, Apex. You're thinking of just shooters, because that's what people are waiting to go to. What about Forza? What about Gran Turismo? What about Crash Team Racing, which is about to come out? What about all of the co-op games that people can play online together? Their live services are everything. Fucking FIFA, okay? FIFA makes a bajillion dollars. These are games that are bought every year. Sony does not own a single sliver of content that they can do in that regard. And I wanted to point that out because while I enjoyed Last of Us, I think it's a very good game, I played mostly everything. Last of Us 2, the little teaser trailer they showed last year, that wasn't real gameplay. That makes me worried that they have not changed anything in the game and it's going to be the exact same mechanics, but with a new story. And the reason I worry about that is because are they going to try to forcibly put in that multiplayer that's awful, terrible bad?
Hey, I thought it was fun, personally.
People still play it. Yeah, it was extremely hard to get into initially, but people played that religiously. That had more of a cult following than like a mass following.
Right.
Than anything.
Yeah, but cult following doesn't sell.
This is true.
It doesn't.
Unless it's Alex Jones, it doesn't sell. They've always had cult followings in that sense, like Uncharted, which I venture that I'm one of the only people that will come out and say I think it's the most overrated story I've ever played in my life.
Oh, I don't.
That's deep.
It's deep, but look, it's good.
You just hurt somebody's whole feelings.
Oh yeah.
Your brother probably wants to physically assault me, and that's
Dude.
I haven't played that series. I want to get back into it, but I think it was 2013, the year I played the first Uncharted game, and it was probably one of the biggest headaches I've ever had trying to beat a video game because of how old the control scheme was, and it's a nightmare.
It was before they had a cover system. You literally couldn't take cover. It was just stand there and take bullets and figure it out. The game evolved effectively. It evolved really well. I just think that people overblow how good it was because there was literally nothing else to play. Killzone was garbage. Last of Us didn't come out till way after. God of War 3, while fun, is not that entertaining from a story standpoint.
Killzone 2 was okay. Killzone 2 was okay.
Killzone as a series kind of flunked, though. You know what I mean?
I agree with that because I mean the third Killzone is pretty whack. Killzone, whatever the one for the PS4 was pretty whack. But the first two were relatively good.
They had amazing storylines. It was an interesting, interstellar seller's storyline that they decided they didn't care about. Can you imagine if they'd actually put effort into the last Killzone? Can you imagine the decent following it would have? Or what about what was it, Resistance: Fall of Man? Remember when they had Resistance and they were boasting about a 64-player multiplayer you could have online? Can you imagine if they put any shred of fucking effort into the 2 games they had? It would be monsters right now for them.
This is true. Resistance Fall of Man Online was fun for me. I will say that personally.
It was fun, but the thing is that they never evolved. It was always that same Doom first person shooter relying on health kits and things like that.
Yeah.
They needed to evolve the game, but they never changed it at all from 1, 2, or 3, and then it just died. It never made it beyond. It never made it to PS4, and neither will you before that. You had one game, literally right in the beginning when the system came out, and it just petered out. And they have zero idea how to make it work.
Well, I mean, does that?
Sony can't make multiplayer games. They suck. They're terrible.
Sony messes. Well, I think for Killzone, it's kind of hard because I think Sony was eventually behind that 100%. But you do have to put something on the actual, regardless of the size, the developers that are actually putting out these games. And in Killzone's instance, Killzone should have followed more of a Halo formula. They had a good character, they had a good antagonist, and they should have just figured out how to do that for a trilogy or for however many games they wanted to do it for. But they managed to screw that up in 2 games.
Well, yeah, but you're talking about a Sony-owned first-party product. You know, that's the issue. Well, the comparison I use is Gears. I mean, Gears of War definitely passed its time, but that doesn't mean that they're just phoning it in. They're still trying. They've innovated the multiplayer to where it's actually pretty fun. The wave system that they had, they added some extra little components to play around with, and it actually made it enjoyable. So now it's not like there's a legitimate, decent PvE to work with. But the whole point is having properties that you can have and put out there that people can play for long periods of time. While Sony destroyed them on the single-player front, Microsoft has obliterated them in multiplayer. I mean, how is PlayStation All-Stars doing? How's that venture?
Hey, don't talk about my game like that, sir. Alright. I still love playing Parappa, having a black belt online, alright? You gonna leave that game alone.
That's what happens when you have a bad formula.
It's not even a bad formula to think about it. I mean, okay, so
when you copycat a formula and then you do it poorly.
It's worse. That's what it is. It's a fighting game formula that they somehow made worse. on top of they own the most overrated racing game title in human history,
Man, I thought he was about to say Crash Team Racing. I was really about to fight you, but go ahead.
Actually.
CTR is life.
Okay.
Gran Turismo is the catalyst of Sony has no idea what they're doing. People were begging for that on the PS3 and they just kept never releasing it. And then they did, and no one talked about it because it was garbage. Meanwhile, on the other end, Forza is a force to be reckoned with. Oh, and it's free on Game Pass. So you've got double on there that you're fighting. You were never going to get $60 out of me for Forza Horizon 4, but I downloaded and played it, and I played it for like 30 or 40 hours because it's gorgeous and it's just fun to want to drive around Britain. And now they've reintegrated Legos into it. So now you can Lego build your own car, and they have all the music from the Lego movie, and it's hilarious. Like, and when you crash into things, the car explodes. It's entertaining as hell. It's the perfect game to get really high and just do stuff.
Um, Going more into PlayStation now. PlayStation has had a legacy, and I mean a legacy of classics spanning from the PlayStation 1 era, the PlayStation 2 era, even some of the PlayStation 3 era. And the fact that you look on PlayStation now and you look at the list and it's just so lackluster.
It's dry.
It's dry. It's a drought, and it's a gaming drought. PlayStation Now is a gaming drought, and it's overpriced for what they give you.
Let's take it in perspective as well. Remember, it used to be the big players used to be before Xbox came around was Sony and Nintendo. So you got to think how good were their games really if all Microsoft had to do was release the original Xbox, and then now it seems like all their classic titles are cheap, uneventful.
I mean, but it still doesn't make it's still not an excuse for why the list is so dry. I mean, for PlayStation Now, it's like what, $20 a month? First of all, $20 a month is just no. Not for a bunch of PS3 titles that yeah, it's $20 a month, okay, for a bunch of PS3 titles that they're very, very niche and have a cult following, or that no one really played. Like, raise your hand right now if you would buy PlayStation Now for $20 a month to sit here and play Tavern, the first 3 God of Wars, and Resident Evil 4. Because and the Metal Gear Solid collection, because that's about it for most people. I mean, there's like a lot of other cool, like, I mean, Tekken Tag, yeah, but then again, it's streaming, so I don't want to play a fighting game on stream. I want to play it live. You know, I don't want to have a delay for it.
I'm looking at it right now. Here's the thing you got to realize: their what's hot selection, which is their,
Oh, I'm going through it, and you shouldn't even say anything.
It's a what not
The fact
selection
that
anyway.
Saints Row 2 is in the what's hot section.
Oh, you're
Not-
looking at. See, I've got worse than that. I'm looking at NBA 2K18. This is a $6 game.
Just continue to go down. You'll see it. You'll see it.
Oh yeah.
Arkham Knight, which
Whack.
is on Game Pass. The WWE 2K18. Again, you're a year behind, brother. Mortal Kombat X. Again, on Game Pass.
3 years behind.
Mafia 3. I want to point out that this game is bad, but you do get to kill a bunch of clan members. So, column A, column B. Lego City Undercover is legitimately fun. I have no gripes. Phantom Pain. Okay. You're doing good.
Phantom Pain.
Civilization Revolution, sure. For Honor. Who cares? I mean, Ninjago, Surgeon Simulator, Elder Scrolls is on Game Pass as well. Saints Row 4, who cares?
Bro, they got Loco Roco on here.
The heat.
Darling, I am
The
brave.
heat.
The heat, bro, is hot right now.
Just in case he wanted to play Ultra Street Fighter 4.
No, not on PlayStation Now. I don't. Trust me.
You see, I'm looking at all of these, and I can tell you right now, they don't have anything. There's no indie titles I'm looking at. There's really nothing here that's grabbing my eye. The first thing I found finally was an indie title is Brawl Out, and that's it. Beyond that, it's just a bunch of name stuff. I mean, Terraria? I can play it on my damn phone. It's so impressive.
You know what's the funny thing?
For like $1, I'm sure.
The funny thing is about PlayStation Now, you can take most of those games right now, swap it for the PlayStation free games that are out right now, and then put the free games into PlayStation Now, and you probably have a fine list. I mean, Borderlands 2 on PlayStation Now, Okay, For Honor that was released a couple months back for PlayStation Now. I mean, it's still on there, but I mean, you get the idea, right?
I agree with you. I think For Honor is a good title to have on there because, if I'm paying $20 a month for this, which is already, I'm an idiot. But if I'm paying that, and I'll play For Honor, I'll give it a try. What does it hurt? They do have a decent library for Bethesda. Oh my God, they have Prey on here. I didn't know they had
Oh man.
having Prey on here is pretty nice. They do have their kind of like go-to name titles. It's smart to have Mako, it's smart to have Shadow of the Colossus, Until Dawn, one of my favorite games by far on this system. But they're charging so much more because they overvalue their product. And then you can see that outside of kind of like their name, owned properties, they don't really have a whole lot to offer. I
Yeah.
will say that I did find Dark Cloud 2 on here. That's one of the greatest games ever made, the entire Dark Cloud series. So there's some points for you. But comparatively, looking at this and knowing the Game Pass log pretty decently right now, Game Pass just has a lot more indies that it's working with, and it's got massive titles that it puts on there. I mean, throwing Metro Exodus on Game Pass, that is huge. I mean, that's a game that still is 40, 50 bucks, going anywhere, and now it's on Game Pass. So a lot of people that weren't going to touch that at all are now going to give it a shot, and it's a fantastic game and part of a great game series, which both Metro Games 2033 and Last Light were also part of Game Pass for a time as well. So there's just so much to work with when you actually have the ability to get in, and you can't do more than $10 or $15 a month. Doing 20? What 20 for what? I mean, for what exactly am I paying $20 here? It's for what, knack? Is it for knack?
Knack, dude. Oh
That's
my
just,
god.
uh, that's true. And just looking up simple reviews of it, just looking for like simple, what's the advantages, what's the disadvantages of it. And the disadvantages, there's killers. There's no PS3 downloads. It's missing many must-play games, which is big, if you're trying to sell a service, especially if you're trying to sell it for double what Microsoft's trying to sell it for.
Game usage, yeah.
And
They're
then
literally doing a reverse of PS4, Xbox, or PS3, sorry, PS4, Xbox One, where it's like, oh, ours is 20, and they're like, yeah, ours is 10. Also, here's Halo.
just hand him on the plate. Halo case. I just.
I mean, like, Gears 4 came out, and it's Game Pass day one. Forza Horizon 4, Game Pass day one. The Outer Worlds is going to be on Game Pass day one. I mean, my God,
now,
these are massively named titles.
now that you mentioned Outer Worlds, which kind of reminded me to come back to Cyberpunk, which is why I'm not jumping on the hype, which is why I didn't really care about Keanu Reeves showing up, also because I probably haven't seen any of the John Wicks.
Me neither.
Oh, baby.
They're a good movie series, so I've heard. I just never got time to watch the movies.
Well, my issue specifically just with Cyberpunk, I'm not jumping on the hype train until the game is actually good, because we have had failed IP, new IP after new IP for the last, I don't know, I think we're on kind of like a streak of the last 3 to 5 years. It's always something. I mean, how hyped were we for Days Gone? And nobody's talking about Days Gone right now.
Right.
Okay, first off, you've got to do your comparisons more correctly, because anyone that was hyped for Days Gone apparently has never played a fucking zombie game, because it is the most generic, typical zombie game difference is it tries to teach you how to put gas in a motorcycle. I mean, there was nothing unique about it whatsoever. The moment that I saw the ad for it, I went, okay, it's a zombie game where you ride a motorcycle. Was I accurate? Yes, completely. The thing about Cyberpunk and the entire basis of it is that, like, have you ever played Deus Ex?
Yes.
Okay, so the mechanics built into there give you various options. So each mission you can handle. You can go in blatant, you can go in quiet, stealthy. You can handle it multiple different ways. That's kind of what Cyberpunk has gone with a lot of its missions, especially its gameplay trailer, where it said, "Hey, we can do this, this, or this. We're going to do this." And that's the whole point of what Cyberpunk offers. It's an RPG that offers a load of options on how you handle things. It uses street cred as like a way to level yourself up based upon like clothing that you wear can increase street cred and things like that. So everything involved matters. And for me, that's what I'm liking a lot about it. And the driving looks good. I mean, it looks just as good as a GTA or anything else. And this is CD Projekt Red. I mean, they made Witcher 3, which is one of my 5 greatest games I've ever played.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a trusted would be a trusted developer at this point in time after after the super success of The Witcher 3, winning Game of the Year that year.
Well, and it did so deservedly. I mean, it created a world that you could change based upon the decisions that you made. And things could get easier or could get harder depending on how you handled situations. And just the sheer amount of content. I mean, my God. I spent 200 hours in this world. Like, there was so much to do. It was obscene. And I got to a point where I would stumble upon things. And that's kind of how I view Cyberpunk, that it's going to be this massive, large world that I can just kind of stumble upon. It'll have its main storyline, but I'm viewing this as like, what if Bethesda actually gave a damn about the development? Like, that's kind of how I'm viewing it. Where we're not having to worry about massive game-breaking bugs. We're not having to worry about old systems that are being updated. This is a clean-cut looking game that offers exactly what you want from an RPG that's based in like the Neo future.
Well, that's I think all anybody wants is for the developer to deliver on the promises, and I think that's my point, that they haven't a lot of developers haven't been able to with things like what was the spaceship one that came out that damn near flopped, No Man's Sky. Things like that. People had the same suspicion about Horizon Zero Dawn, but Horizon ended up extremely well, which is great. But with things like the failure of Fallout 76, you can't even necessarily trust the people who have done well. So whenever I see a new IP, I am overly cautious because it's been a bad couple of years.
Well, I think there's a difference between cautious and not being able to read something very obviously. Fallout 76 was doomed. The moment that they said, "Oh, there's no NPCs," okay, so you're not going to be able to cover up your dog shit game with actual enjoyment. They just added NPCs. It only took them half a year to realize that their game was trash.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're adding NPCs to the game and a battle royale mode because everything fucking sucks.
Anyway, moving past the battle royale scene right now. What? I'm gonna assume this is a single player based game, having no NPCs. So who are you talking to? Yourself?
Other people.
No, Fallout 76, that was always online.
Oh.
Hey, yo.
Okay. But still, that's stupid. For the type of game that it is, not having NPCs. I don't care if it's online or not. Having no NPCs is stupid.
It was stupid because, I mean, if you've ever played anything from Bethesda or any open world game of any kind, you need to have interaction with the world. There's fun and entertaining, and there's so much to do. But when you strip that away and you're basically just talking to a robot that gives you a mission, there's no connection. There's no connecting to the characters. Like for all the faults that Fallout 4 has, the one big strength it had is one of its DLCs. I just forgot the name of it. Port something. You go up to the main, and you're sent there by a family trying to find their daughter. So you go find her and you come back, and then from that point, depending on how you handle the situation, she might go back, she might stay with her parents. But because it gives you that kind of connection to go looking for this person, and oh, here's all this other stuff to do, it gives you that depth into the world where like, okay, well, I'll help this person, or I'll help them, and I'm not going to help them. It gives you that option. When you take away the NPC character, and now it's just some generic robot saying, can you please go tell Steve so-and-so that he needs to pay his rent? Well, you know that you're going to walk in and there's a fucking skeleton, you're going to take, like, I don't know, like a letter or something off of them because they're dead. So there's zero interest of anything going on. And it's just reused assets over new landscape. That's your biggest problem. They do not innovate, they don't try. But with Cyberpunk being a strictly single player with a super massive map, there's so much room for me to do things. Where you may focus completely on the bottom left corner of the city. I may focus on the top right, and that's what I do for 50 hours. That's that amount of content, the sheer weight of content, is really the strength of Cyberpunk and what it take. That some games just don't. I mean, even I love Horizon Zero Dawn, but there's a certain point where there was so much in between everything that I felt like I was forced to fast travel. I don't want to feel forced to fast travel. That gets aggravating.
Could you say that Cyberpunk 2077 is the full name, right? Would this be the revival of single-player games as a whole? Possibly.
Oh, they're never going to die. I think that you're going to have fewer big name single player games come out. That's where your major issue comes into play. Is okay, well, how many single player games are you really going to play? Ask yourself.
Not a lot, personally.
At any given, exactly. But that's for most people, because at any given time you can only really dedicate to maybe 2 or 3 grand total. I mean, I love single player games, but the majority of what I play right now is Apex Legends and Monster Hunter World. That's the majority of what I play.
Yup.
And both are online games. And come July 2nd, when they release Watson for Season 2 of Apex, I'm even more all in. Because I am totally down for Watson. She looks aggravating as hell. I am excited about it. And then Monster Hunter World, they're releasing DLC Iceborne, and it's going to be the same size and scale as the current game, with another like dozen monsters added to the game series. You're doing everything right for a game. Like that alone, that keeps me coming back. Single player games, their biggest problem is you play them, you beat them, you don't, you just kind of stop playing. And that becomes the major problem.
Me personally. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, they just don't have that much replay value, depending on the game, obviously, but most of them do not retain any kind of replay value. For example, I beat Horizon Zero Dawn. Loved it. Never got to play the DLC, but I am not buying that game again and then buy the DLC, or when I could get the full complete edition. I am not going to play through that damn game again just to then finally get to play the DLC. I'm not doing that. It's too much work.
Right. And Me personally, taking it back to the classics for single player games, for me, if it wasn't fighting games, I grew up on my, single player adventure games or story based games like Crash Bandicoot or something as good as like Metal Gear Solid 1. Alright. Those were games that were like, alright, single player, kind of challenging at some points, either interesting story or just fun gameplay to override the other. I mean, Metal Gear Solid's controls were hard back in the day for me, but I mean,
Well, tank controls in general were trash.
yeah. So, I mean, but the story was just amazing, and
Right.
I don't really see single player games like that in most recent time that are living up to a standard like those classics. And that's where I find a problem with trying to buy another single player game. Because I have the God of War remake, 2018 remake, in my closet. I just I never put it in my system. I just have it. It's just sitting there. And I kind of want to play it at some day, but here I am playing Overwatch, Apex, Mortal Kombat 11, and probably redoing the Crash Bandicoot remastered games over and over again. And that's about it. For me, like, single player games aren't really like they were before. They're kind of toned down. The gameplay's not too great. Or if they're story based, the story base isn't really too interesting to me. The last thing I could think about, and most recently, is The Last of Us. That game is old as ever. How long has it been out?
Which is pretty interesting, because if a game doesn't have a good story base for me, honestly, I won't play it unless there's it has to be a really good multiplayer base going on. So, for example, Overwatch kind of has a story to it, but overall, it's the multiplayer aspect of it. And I played Overwatch for, 2-3 years straight, and then just kind of put it down. Apex Legends doesn't have a story at all, really, but had a good multiplayer aspect to it.
Oh, they're trying to bring lore into Apex, but it's bit by bit, It's something, but it's not too much where it's like, all right, well, you guys are just kind of pushing it.
Well, I heard there was going to be a dragon next season, and I was like, stop. Don't Fortnite this. No one cares that much.
Really?
No one cares.
Honestly, just add a solo queue to it, and I'm sold on Apex. And that's it. And well, having your two teammates leave is not really solo queuing, but I digress. So, stated gaming. First, I kind of want to talk about how Microsoft and Sony are going to one-up each other. What do they need to do in order to get that leading role again coming up in 2020? Microsoft seems to be like they're already on the right track from these years by, even though sales is really plummeting with the system itself. They're gaining IPs, they're gaining developers. They're already got some developers on board for some exclusives. All right. And, the recent absence of Sony at E3, we have no news of them. We have nothing to go off of. Now, they can use this to their advantage come 2020 and then just bombard us with, crazy good things with the PS5, which is what I'm really hoping for. Because I've been dedicated to Sony for all these years. God bless my soul, right? But, they haven't said anything. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. So what are you guys' thoughts about it? How are they going to go about this? How should they go about? What do you think is going to come up next year? Stuff like that.
I think I'll let Sean answer on the Microsoft side, which I think is a relatively simple answer, and I'll kind of answer the Sony side on things there. And I think Sony's got the more complex answer coming up. Microsoft just kind of needs to keep doing what they're doing. in my opinion. But I'll let Sean kind of take over that. But
Oh yeah.
for Sony, there's got to be a plan. It can't there really can't be we can just wing this. We can do what we did
And we're gonna
in
unpack
previous
this
years.
plan, but first let's give it up to Sean for this very simple Microsoft explanation that we're about to receive.
Well, I gotta say this will probably be the last thing I say because I actually have to get going here in a moment. But
Okay, well
All
we
right.
appreciate you joining us.
oh, by far, I appreciate you having me. Microsoft, I mean, the easiest way is just keep on keeping on. I mean, they have built, they have an infrastructure in place. They've chosen wisely in what they're rolling with. Their entire basis right now is to sell systems. And the easiest way to do that is to offer big name titles on your systems and then just do microtransactions. That's what's going to make you the money back. And anyone that wants to bitch and complain, that's gaming today. You're going to pay microtransactions, you're going to buy expansions, you're going to buy packs. That's just how it is. You're going to see microtransactions in Halo probably similar to those that you see in Destiny. A lot of cosmetics, things along those lines. I am interested to see if they go back to power system that Reach had, and maybe just give 4 or 5 different powers, because I think they need to go ahead and steal that back. The same way that like Destiny has theirs, and Apex Legends has theirs. Giving that little tide turning ability is a massive boon for any sort of first-person shooting game. That's what I fully expect right now. The thing for Sony, by comparison, if they're going to stick true with their their first-party single-player games that they're go-to, that's fine. They're just going to have to pump them out a lot. And I feel like Days Gone is kind of what you're going to get on average. They're not going to have many great ideas to put pen to paper and just write. Days Gone is a game that is okay. It has pretty interesting mechanics. I do like the zombies and hordes actually horde instead of just kind of running aimlessly. That is really well done. But at the end of the day, it's just a zombie game with driving. I mean, that's really the core of it. There isn't anything beyond that. It's not breathtaking or changing. They're going to stick with that formula, and it worked for PS4. But they also had a massive boom, a lot of help from Microsoft screwing the pooch. They're also going to need to continue to
Very true.
with everybody, because if it's Sony and then everyone else, then Sony is the odd one out, because Nintendo, PC, which Microsoft always knows about Steam also in that sense, and then Microsoft with the Xbox, all three are connected and interplay between everything. You can take your Rocket League account from PC and play on Xbox. You can't switch around anything really with Sony. They just do not want to do this.
Solid explanation.
And with that, I bid you guys adieu. Thank you much for having me.
Not a problem.
All right.
Work overtime.
All right, Sean Effect. See you when I see you.
See you, my man. Have a good one.
Yep.
Have a good one.
See you, man. So I think we'll I'll kind of go into this point with Sony, and then we can kind of do some final remarks, and then potentially wrap this up if you're all right with that. But as stated before, Sony's. I'm hoping that they have a plan. So Sony's not dumb. They're a business. They've been doing this for a long time. They know that Microsoft's kicking butt, and they know that their absence from E3 was felt and could hurt them in the long term. So my understanding is that they've got something in the works. They've got something kind of big coming down the line, and I think it's about 2 specific things. specifically The Last of Us 2 and the PlayStation 5. Last of Us 2, there's not a lot of information on it. We haven't got a solid release date. There are rumors that it's February. If it's February, I'm not sure how that's going to work. That's going to be kind of a weird launch date for them. Because that'll be before the PlayStation 5 comes out, starting to talk about the end of the life of the PlayStation 4. But I think it's going to vary almost 2 big points because The Last of Us Part 2 is the main reason why I think a lot of people got their PlayStation 4s in the first case, just so they knew that that game would come out eventually, and like, hey, we're gonna play this. It's one of the most important games of our lifetime, honestly, and kind of what keeps the single player genre going. And with titles like the newest God of War and Last of Us Horizon Zero Dawn, there is a little bit of spark of life in the single player spectrum. So getting out The Last of Us 2 and having it be successful, marketing that correctly, I think it's going to be a big point of bringing more people back into the fold of Sony and the games, because that's Sony's biggest focus right now, it seems like, is not necessarily the volume of content, which is where Microsoft is winning at, but necessarily the quality of that content. And can that quality, can that value outweigh you just having mass amount of games access to, especially with PlayStation now costing more. So I see them potentially taking a similar step that Microsoft is and trying to build their cloud gaming service a little bit better, perhaps rebranding it, renaming it. But you actually haven't heard a lot of news about that in the future, but we haven't heard any Sony news. We haven't heard anything except for specs on the PlayStation 5 about how fast it was going to be. They were promising no load times. A lot of promises being made, but we haven't seen a console. We don't have a name of a console. We don't have a release date. We essentially don't have anything. That's why they weren't at E3, because they don't have anything yet. But if they're talking about a 2020 release date, if they're talking about potentially showing up to a 2020 E3, talking about a big year coming up here for Sony. A big year that I think starts off with the success of The Last of Us 2, assuming that game comes out in February, which is a big assumption. And then from there, leading into this big debut of the PlayStation 5, which is also currently rumored to be more powerful than Project Scarlet. So you take all that and then you try to roll with that momentum. And I think that's the best shot that they've got. But go ahead, Ryan.
When you were talking about who's releasing what in February?
Potentially Naughty Dog releasing the Last of Us 2, obviously PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah, that, I agree. That would probably be PlayStation's only saving grace right now, because February is always tax time. What is everybody going to dump money into? Everything they've been waiting for. Whether it's cars, whether it's games, that's going to be the only thing. And if they can keep up their release with their PlayStation 5 in 2020, that's a pretty thin string that they're holding on to if they're going to do the same thing if they find out that Last of Us Part 2 works very well on that release date.
But see, and here's where I'm going out with this. So we've all been talking about how Sony hasn't really showed up with anything. It's only just bare minimum specs of this new system. And say, this is where companies will try to get you. It's the turn of a new decade, okay? This is the most important for every gaming company, not just Sony and Microsoft, really. We're talking about Nintendo. We're talking about game developers, publishers. Everything is going to change within the next year. So what I'm thinking, and you guys can agree or disagree with what I'm saying, but I feel like since Sony hasn't given us any information right now, and if they choose not to give us information for the rest of the year, they're going to ball out next February with tons of content and information, everything with a announcement of the PlayStation 5. And I mean, like, we're talking content on top of content. We're talking about amazing spec. We're talking about game releases, exclusives. You can like, I'm going out on a limb and saying, like, you could probably expect Sony to say, all right, listen here. So the PlayStation 5 will be backwards compatible from every system before that. And I said this before, and I mean, like, honestly, Sony saying something as wild as that may be, it's a possibility.
That's only because Microsoft has done that, basically. They've went as far as backwards compatible as possible, so they have to compete with it. On top of that, if they're doing what you think they are with creating tons of content, I mean, you got to think about it. They had loads of games and movies and options for the PlayStation Vita, but that still didn't do as well as Nintendo's version with their 3DS and everything. You can throw content left and right.
Well, I gotta interject on that. Trying to beat Nintendo in the handheld game is
hard.
Is absolutely. I want to say it's impossible, but nothing's impossible. Never say
Listen,
never.
I'll say this.
It's basically impossible. You can't. And here's my thing. Even if Nintendo sold one game on the 3DS, nothing else. Let's say it was just one game, and it was Pokemon, it would still outsell the Vita 3 times over.
Harsh.
Well, you see what I'm talking about, though, that if Microsoft establishes dominance, and they've already have the new base for the customers that Sony kind of has dropped off on.
Mm-hmm.
Sean was talking about that right now PS4 is in a limbo. I got sucked into it with PS4 because I didn't like the way Microsoft and Xbox were turning as far as privacy issues and this, that, and the other. But don't get me wrong, their games are AAA, quadruple A style. They have access to all the developers that Sony usually wouldn't have the money for or want to divulge any of their proprietary information to. That's the reason why Microsoft wins, even though I don't like the way that they've played ball in the past 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure about how their new take on things in the past 5 years. They still already have a consistent player base. Coming from someone who had an Xbox 360 Live, spent loads of money on multiplayer, single player, Halo, Borderlands, Gears of War, Call of Duties, everything that they had was always rock solid. Their IPs, their trilogies, their their sequel games that they were able to just buy out and secure IPs for is an insane amount, because not only did they have access to their own console market, they also reached out and said, hey, this is for the PC, right? Oh man, it's running on our operating system already. Is there any way you could tweak it? We'll give you the APIs and you can put it on our system too. That would ultimately double your sales. Sony did not have that advantage. So for them to go and say, all right, we will do backwards compatibility from the new games now on the PS5 all the way down to the PS1, you just pop the disc in and go. It's kind of like, there's this taco stand down the street that's been offering everything, not just tacos, but everything. And, I got this bagel place that I go to every once in a while that's now finally offering tacos with bagels. I mean, choices.
It's an interesting way to put it.
There's also another thing that was said earlier on in a podcast, that Microsoft has a lot of fuck you money, and they will use that to their advantage. poor, and that's going to be Sony's biggest downfall if they fall in the turning of next year, is because they're not securing enough IPs. They're not willing to put out the money to make more sales for their system. I mean,
But then you got to think as well. You have all these exclusive deals that Microsoft is grabbing, or that Epic Games is trying to grab, and then Epic Games is screwing those people over. And then Steam is in the battle as well with some of the IPs with Microsoft. So I mean, literally, if this was a four-way ring battle, you know, 3 of the competition already has more experience than Sony.
true, true. I can't even deny it, and that's ultimately on Sony's part, which
I mean,
which
don't get me wrong. They have a nice lockdown system, and they keep their software close to the vest, but that is their biggest downfall.
But I mean, the fact that, because Sony isn't dumb, they probably already recognize these problems within their company, right? I mean, if I was the president, I would look at all these issues that are coming up within the past years like, damn, we really don't have anything pumping out for our system. Which is why I'm so focused on the fact that since Sony hasn't said anything, that when it comes to 2020, it's either going to make them for this next generation or completely break them.
Well, when was the last time that they changed the CEO? You got to look at that too, because if we've had the same CEO for Sony for the past
CEO retired, I believe. I'm gonna have to fact check that. I want to say the American CEO retired, but give me a couple moments on that.
You do have to look at who is really running the show. Yeah, you have a company having 2 different CEOs in 2 different countries, but who's making the big choices? You have to look at things culturally as well. Microsoft is an American corporation. They'll steamroll anything every American corporation does unless they outsource. That's just our industrialist way. Now, if you look at the Japanese culture, you got to think a lot of the offices were ran under tradition for the longest time, and they have their way of doing things. So over the years, how many CEOs have used the Japanese traditional way of running things, sticking with the way that it's worked for them?
Very
Take
true.
that into account as well. It might not have been, you know, the whole company's fault. I'm not outing saying that tradition is bad, but if someone didn't want to budge who was high up, that could have been the whole reason why the PlayStation Network has stagnated for so long.
This is true. I can kind of agree with you on that, but at the exact same time, they kick ass in Japan, and that's where that's home for them. You know what I mean? Like, obviously they want the sales in the United States, but if it's working in Japan, it's working in Japan. You're not going to be able to put out like a Japanese PlayStation and then revamp the entire, you know, you're talking about the user interface here, revamp the user interface, revamp the way PlayStation Now works, so it can be a little bit more profitable, a little bit more, can't think of the word, like more affordable while still being profitable, and something that's interesting to the people in the States and the people in Europe. That's just not going to happen. So it's like, do you kind of bastardize the way that you want to do business to make it so that you can sell to the Americans a little bit easier?
I mean,
it's all about principle at that point. Is what is your goal? I mean, is the Japanese ran company Sony trying to make a buck everywhere, or are they trying to satisfy their customer base in their country? That's what I believe some people aren't getting at when people get into debates about this. Who is that country really trying to sell for? Yes, they might have an option for Americans, but I mean, as I said again, going back to the Japanese culture and how they ran things under tradition, what if that's all they wanted to do? I mean, companies can be greedy, they can be distraught, they can be careless, but also, if you flip it from another perspective, what if they're not greedy? If they're not
they
greedy,
want
they're
to
not going
win.
to try that. They want to win, but if they're
They
not that
want to
greedy,
win.
there's not that drive.
Greediness doesn't necessarily make you win, because greediness is what kept them in the seventh console war between the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. Because here I want to point back after this. Microsoft has always basically had screw you money, right? Why is Microsoft always charged for online? Why has Microsoft made it at every single point to be able to, if it's an additional service, if it's anything additional that does not come with the Xbox standard, that it charges you for everything? If Microsoft has so much screw you money, why does it end up that way? Essentially, is what I've never understood. So even though the PlayStation cost more when it came out, PlayStation 3 came with wireless in it. You could connect to a network. With your Xbox, you had to go out and buy a $20 to $60 adapter, or if you got the thing that went in the Xbox directly, when that first came out, that was damn near $100. And then you had to pay for Xbox Live, and then you
It was 120 actually when it was first released.
which is insane. So if Microsoft has so much screw you money, why not continue to dominate the console war, which they did win that one? But why not continue to dominate that console war and say, oh, Live is half off. Live is half off, basically. What we were playing the charge for Live.
They invest in. Look what Microsoft invests in as well. They not only invest in, you know, gaming technology or even advertisement. They also deal in other. I'm a little bit sketchy on some of this, but I know that they, with the VR and AR technology, I know they've been doing that for the past, like, I think almost 7 or 8 years of investing money with that. And that has two different plays to it. You've got the video game aspect and the entertainment aspect, and you've also got the work environment. A lot of these companies that are investing in VR are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars, probably more than that, to be able to do part recognition and doing all this kind of stuff in these AR and VR headsets for industrialization, working environments to make them safer, to make them easier to work on. I mean, you gotta look, Microsoft is not just one single company here. They've been around for a while, and they have their hand in a lot of pies. They've got more limbs in pies than we have fingers. So that's why I believe that they can charge for everything, because they're not just using, I mean, unless you have direct access to their accounts and you can see all their numbers and where they're shuffling money and what's going on, you don't know where their extra profit is going. It could be being sent back to give the CEOs bonuses. It could be into invest in an aircraft flight.
That's true, but with the overall size of that company and how successful it is, how much with the influx of cash in that company, you don't need to be greedy at every single corner. In which, in the life of the Xbox, they were greedy at every single corner. They tried to be greedy at every single corner with the Xbox One when it came out. They weren't even trying to throw a mic in the system.
Well, look at it this way. How much does it cost for a Windows 10 license right now?
I have no idea. That shit was free and terrible.
It's look at where they shifted their free part in this season, we call it, of their business. The operating system, they're focusing on so many different wars right now. They've got the console war, they got the operating system war. Linux is taking a rise and is becoming more dominant day by day. And it's not there yet, but as soon as Steam's Proton and the Wine compatibility layer came out, for people to be able to run the software that they want to right now, without having to pay for Windows or download Windows, or deal with their files being deleted on update, they have a battle between Linux.
Although that is the same company, those things are ultimately separate, which is the exact reason why you've maybe seen Bill Gates on stage at one E3, I would imagine. I think
The last time that I actually remember seeing Bill Gates on stage was at the original Xbox release. It's the only time that I watched E3.
I think so. I think we're thinking
Right.
of the exact same one. So Bill Gates is like, his name really isn't on this. Xbox has always, not always, but a few years back, I'm gonna say 5, 6 years back, it was finally able to be in its own realm outside of Microsoft. It's obviously still Microsoft at the end of the day, but what goes on at Xbox stays in Xbox.
Well, you got to look at this too, as since Stadia is taking an all Linux approach to their game streaming and using, I believe, AMD GPUs. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's all AMD GPUs because of the Vulkan API. Microsoft has actually invested and bought into the Linux Foundation, and they have the capability of running a Linux kernel in the background of your Windows 10 machine. So they are trying to make advances on that as well. So who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years? What if Windows is now a Linux-based kernel? And that's why their operating system is switching over to a free approach, and why they're charging more now around every turn for all of these services.
It's interesting.
Interesting.
It's very interesting.
I mean, there's about 12, 15 different ways you can probably look at it if we get a couple more people in here, but Microsoft has been notorious for extending out a hand, taking them in, and then destroying it from the inside. So a lot of people are skeptical right now if that's what they're doing with Linux, because years ago there was one CEO, I can't remember his name, but he hated Linux so bad, he thought it was a cancer.
I don't think I feel like not many people know too much about it. So
I would have to search it up, and maybe for another time when we deal with like the history of Windows or something, or history of Microsoft.
Right.
You know, what changes they've made. But no, that there was a consistent battle back in, I think, the early 90s. That, you had this big group of protesters who were very upset that they had to pay extra for a computer because Windows 95 or I think it was 95 was preloaded on, or Windows 3.1 was preloaded on it, and they were all running Linux.
I've never touched Linux. I feel like Windows is potentially, minus Windows 10 and Windows 8,
Right.
is potentially the superior operating system, but then I'm pretty biased on that.
Well, I can, with my graphics card that I've got installed now, I could run Overwatch on my PC right now. I just have to download it. I'm running Linux Mint, and I've got Proton and Steam and the Wine compatibility layer, and for Pete's sakes, you can almost damn near run Adobe Photoshop before they turn that into a service.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I mean, I was able to get the old Crysis games to work, and was able to get, let's see, I got all the Borderlands currently released out working. All the Windows versions are running, I think, at over 122 frames per second. I didn't want to push it. Just fine. I don't have any newer recent games, I guess, that are super graphically intensive, but everything that I can afford to throw it at, or that I've already had, it's ran pretty good. So I mean, things have caught up with the Linux aspect of things, and that's why Microsoft is getting their hooks in there quick. Because let's see, I believe that they are starting when they bought GitHub, they were starting to release a lot more source code for a lot of the other Windows software. I can't remember all the stuff, but they started to release source code for some of their proprietary software that nobody really thought they were ever going to. So,
Right.
People are probably made Linux versions out of it. I mean, it would be kind of funny to have the original Minesweeper on your Android phone.
You know,
Remember, Android.
Oh, I was
Android is
never good
next
at
to
Minesweeper.
I completed it once in my lifetime, and I was like, you know what? And then I realized you can make it bigger. I was like, no,
Just no.
no. But going back to what you said before about how Microsoft underhands people like other companies and then try to screw them over is very interesting because one of the last things I want to talk about before we kind of wrap this up is cross-platforming. That it's a relatively small thing, but rumors have come up time and time again over these past couple of months.
People have wanted cross-platforming since the same games were on the PS2 and the Xbox.
Exactly. So, do you guys think that this will come about in the next year? How would
I
it
think it's
affect
gonna come
the?
out soon. I think it's gonna come out soon, but it's just all gonna depend. I mean, all the hardware now between the consoles and the PC is pretty much similar. I mean, you take that basically the PS4's got an RX AMD card built into it with shared memory, and the Xbox One's got something pretty similar to that in it as well. And then my computer, we could put all three of them together and put them in a bout if we had Epic Games turn on their crossplay by accident again, and they'd probably all run just about the same.
Right.
Now, the biggest reason why crossplay was frowned upon when I was looking it up on forums when I was growing up 5, 10, almost 15 years ago, is that there was people complaining about graphics. Oh, you can see farther than me because you've got a computer with a better graphics card and I'm on an original Xbox or I'm on an Xbox 360 or that was the main reason. It was an unfair advantage. But now since everything is running almost the same hardware, when you hit mid-tier, it's kind of almost pointless now because if you're in it to play games, you either spent money on a console or you've upgraded your PC. And a lot of these developers and these console manufacturers are understanding that, well, I guess it's not really about what's fair anymore. It's about what these people want. And that's why Nintendo and Microsoft have been in talks for a while. And Sony didn't want to get in on it because then they think that they'd lose business
Which
from
is
rumors that got
something
out.
important to talk about when it comes between these two major companies. How would this even affect either Sony or Microsoft's sales, and if so, how?
Probably not, if anything, because at least all of us in our generation who grew up playing all these games on different systems and going to our friends' houses and be like, oh man, I got the same game but different console, I wish we could play. There's a lot of us out there now, and I'm sure if they did a test batch,
We're
I'm sure
hella
people
excited
would
for
go,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, dude.
people would be getting a credit card out and be like, yeah, I'll spend $300 on all these games because I can play cross-platform. It doesn't matter if my friend down the street has got a PS4, I've got the Xbox One, and then you know what, my buddy in Canada, he's got a PC, we can all play this together.
You know, I
And
think cross-platforming would slowly but surely kind of end this little gaming war because if you introduce the fact, okay, well, now these let's say all these newer generation consoles come out, PS5 comes out, Xbox 2, I guess. I don't know what they're gonna call it, right? Xbox 2, we're gonna go with that. And Nintendo turn, I don't know. And let's say they all come out with relatively within the next year, and PC is upgrading like literally every year, if not every other year. It will be really interesting to see like how is there
well,
still going to be a war? Is it going to die down? Is it going to come up even more?
I could I could give you a plausible theory of mine that I've been thinking about probably for the past couple of years. So once you take away the specific hardware and you're able to play with all your friends, and it doesn't matter what you're on, you're really just stripping the faces of the companies, and it boils down to what games do you really like to play. That's really what it is. As we were talking about before with the different type of IPs that Sony has versus Xbox and the availability of what is on PC and the Switch, I mean, that's what it's going to come down to is why are you an Xbox player? Well, there's a lot of co-op games that I can play, from Borderlands to Halo to Gears of War. Why are you a Sony player? I love their single-player experience with their games, from Uncharted to their release on BioShock, and I thought that looked magnificent. You know, why are you playing on the Switch? Oh, because I can play Mario Kart. I love Mario Kart.
And then with the introduction of crossplay would kind of like, all right, well, multiplayer doesn't really matter because once one game starts to introduce it between the two companies, it's gonna be like an avalanche, you know? I'm pretty sure if the first game does successful, then there's gonna be a span of other games that are gonna come out, and you know, it might just kind of break this war in half. It might be peace.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just going to strip the companies down to. It's ultimately, I think it's going to make the companies work harder, because if you can play Fortnite with your friends between everything, then people are just going to go for what's cheaper. They're going to really be focusing on the IPs that they collect and the games that they could make. If all the hardware matches up pretty much to the same and people can play what they want. And I think that the game companies, you know, kind of thought about that, and the system holders, those companies, I think they kind of thought that that might have been one of the possibilities too, is like, well, crap, if everybody can play together, then why do we have to sell these consoles for an obscene price? There's no advantage to that. That means we have to make better games and spend more money on, you know, storyboarding and trying to come up with gimmicks, when it's already hard enough in today's age because the ideas are running short. It's just like music. There's a theory going on that we're going to run out of original tunes very soon. I forget what the date was, but the same thing goes with video games and ideas. I mean, if you take Don't Stop Believin' or one of the Journey songs or whatever, and you just change the chords around, you've got what was it? You've got a Bruno Mars song or something like that. A lot of the pop is based off of that. Just those chords from a Journey song. So I mean, you're making
Ryan,
these companies
I get your point. I think that's the thing everybody thinks about regarding where things are going towards in the future, especially if Microsoft really takes off with the cloud gaming services here, getting that on all devices. I think kind of the answer to your question is looking more in the past and what has defined each one of the console wars. And the majority of the time, typically, it's not content. Content is it's really important regarding the console war, but it's never what wins the console war ultimately. So if you start back from where it really started to pick up, the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, and the GameCube, virtually all had the exact same games. There were some big exclusives on each one, you know. PlayStation still had Final Fantasy exclusives at the time, you know, Final Fantasy X, things like that.
Now, what about the hardware? Look at the hardware performance as well. From my understanding, GameCube was severely underpowered. It had a 400 megahertz.
But still had all your big games that you needed. You know, all three of them had. You know, when Sonic was working into 3D at the time, it came out with Sonic Heroes. Having Sonic Heroes on your console was extremely important. It was on all three. When Soul Calibur 2 came out, remember how big Soul Calibur 2 was? It was on all three consoles.
It got remade on PS3.
They all got their own character. All they did was try to define themselves differently with when the game was multi-platform, and they would have exclusives. But what won that generation, honestly, hands down, is the fact that Nintendo was trying to be like Microsoft and Sony, and tried to have the similar games and just tried to beat them at their own game and completely failed. The only thing that kept them alive was Smash and having a normal sized controller. And then when you moved over into Microsoft, Microsoft was just new to the genre. Nobody was really going to trust them 100% until they had one successful console, and then they would start talking about the next cycle. But you know, all they had was Halo 1 and Halo 2. That's all that really matters.
What was the quality of the games that each respective company was pumping out? I mean, I didn't have a PlayStation.
Sony and Microsoft nearly identical, but Sony had been around longer, and more people trusted Sony because, you know, if you're a game developer, it's like, okay, do you trust this new Microsoft product that nobody's really heard of? Yeah, Halo's cool, but the hell's really playing brute force? You know,
and also like look at the size of controller, man, and it looks like a friggin' table, all right?
Right.
Like,
they had their whole redesign like a whole year later, so they're, you know, people are like, we trust Sony. We put our games on Sony. So Sony was just the more trusted household product at the time. Everybody had a PlayStation in their home. That was what you did.
PlayStation 2 anyway.
Right, PlayStation 2.
I guess mine was a little different. We never touched a Sony device because they were too expensive. We had a used N64, and then we went from a used N64 to a brand new OG Xbox.
Because I don't even think the big sports games were on PlayStation on Xbox at the time.
NHL 2002, Triple Play 2002,
Burnout.
Burnout. There was a lot of sports games actually. That was one of their main hooks, is because since I believe it was more powerful on the graphics perspective, they took that sports niche and just ramped it up. It's like, hey, we can add double the polygons. Let's roll with it. It's so much better. It's so much better.
And then Halo was a thing, and that just kind of ruined Sony.
Yeah. And see, that was content.
But if we look at units sold, it's still.
PS2 is still uncontested.
It's a no contest. And if we look at total content, we're talking about volume now. We're talking about volume. Yeah. Just because Sony's been around longer, it's Sony. Sony wins 100%. But then when we switch into the next one, when we start to talk about the 360, the PS3, obviously Sony gets off to a bad start by having a console with an extremely bad price. But what honestly wins the day for Microsoft is online experience and multiplayer, even if they're charging for it.
And Halo.
And Halo. And the UI is constantly developing. I watched Microsoft go through 3 different UI changes, and it was amazing each time. When they first got the NXE, the new Xbox experience, that shit was awesome compared to the process before.
I mean, I can't see the future, so I mean, as I predicted, my opinion, I think they're just gonna have to work harder at creating better content, because we're getting to, like I said, with our generation, we just want crossplay. We just want to be able to play with our friends. The new generation coming up, what do they want? Because I don't even have the time to know what they want. They're
not even old enough yet, because I mean, like the new generation is the ones playing Fortnite. You know,
like, and still in middle school / high school.
Right.
So that's where it's going to start shifting to with the market. So that's why I was saying that, well, if everything runs about the same, you know, they're going to have to find a way to hook this new generation, because it's not like everybody's going to be able to pay for all the games we want ever. And our generation is getting older and has other responsibilities. It's just a cycle of life.
Right.
So this new generation is going to be taking over. If all they want to do is play Fortnite and Minecraft,
they're gonna grow. They're gonna get past it, because I mean, all we wanted to do was play GTA, and GTA has evolved so much. Like, Rockstar's a company that has responded so well to aging consumers, that, you know, here we are now with GTA 5 is a masterpiece, but still same game, but compare it to like GTA 3 when that first got big and people were playing that, and parents were like, "Oh, don't play GTA 3, you'll become a criminal."
There's a lot of shooting and cussing. I don't want my child playing that game. Honestly, though, for this generation, all you need is a good shooter, probably with some monster characters, and your character can probably do a dancing emote and say some funny one-liners, and you got a pretty sold game for this new generation. And the console that does that first is probably going to attract the money.
Yeah, and that's why, they're really going to, if all, like I said, if everybody can play with their friends, and it doesn't matter what system they have, they're just going to have to make and find the IPs that are going to grab their audience. Because if they can't do that, then they will get left behind. Because it doesn't matter what service you have at that point. If you have two friends, one of them gets an Xbox, the other one gets a PlayStation, and they can both play their same games that they want to, and they find out that their friend with the Switch can't join them, well, the friend with the Switch, he's going to be out of luck. Next time the consoles come around, he's going to go get an Xbox or a PlayStation. That's just how it's going to be. I mean, I'm not to say that our new generation is simple-minded, but how were we back then? All we wanted was our few things, and that was it. That's what stage they're in. I mean, it's kind of funny how the next generation has a lot more power than we think. Not just political power, but with the way that they shape the world as far as even to our video games.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
So
these are the money. These are where the companies are getting their money at nowadays. These are the ones that are gonna provide new content for YouTube and have their 7-year-old kids screaming on the internet for God knows what song that they want to play now that becomes a meme. This is the new generation of gaming. These 15 to 16, even younger generation. These are what these companies are gonna have to go out for.
And I mean, that's really ultimately gonna change how this next 10 years is gonna go with these consoles, is because we all know how the games have been and how everything's going down, and we don't really have a choice or say because, well, we're just not playing them as much anymore anyways. I mean, unless we're somebody who lives with our parents in a basement and we're not capable of getting jobs, as he was talking about before, I mean, we only have time for how many games in a day on top of our responsibilities? So our market share as a generation has dropped considerably.
Exactly. Which is why they'll be able, looking at leading examples like Fortnite is so important, because Fortnite, I think, is a game that tried to cater to the old crowd, and we just did not buy into it. And then when they're like, well, what's PUBG got going on? A lot of younger kids play that. Let's play that. Let's kind of copycat that formula, and that ends up being way more successful.
They ate that up. They ate it up. Swallowed it, licked the bowl clean, put it away. All right, they ate it up, and honestly, how else can I really say it? Now you got a bunch of games. You got AAA titles copying the same system as PUBG. Honestly, Call of Duty needing a battle royale, unnecessary. Whatever you have to say about Call of Duty did not need a AAA title to succeed. What they needed to do was create different content besides their same lame multiplayer that you get 6 or less people and then play TDM or search and destroy. But
looks like Ryan just left the tavern.
All right.
Earlier than expected. So I think we talked about a lot tonight, and I think we can go ahead and
wrap this up. All right. Before we wrap this up, I'd like to thank the people that came on to the show. Our guests, also known as our designated drivers, even though they kind of left us on the road here a little bit early. Don't know how we're going to get home.
We're walking home tonight.
Uh, calling Uber maybe, but thanks. Big shout out to Sean. Forgot his full name already.
Sean Effect.
Sean Effect. Yes, and Catalyst here. You know, they brought in a lot of information. You know, gave us a little bit more insight to technical and business minds for both Microsoft, Sony, and like pretty much the rest of gaming as we know it. And we're just regular consumers waiting to see what's going to happen next, what's coming, what is our future, what are people going to be excited to play. Are we still going to have single player titles? Are we going to have multiplayer titles, co-op? Are we going to expand our experience between like different systems? All of that really just got unpacked in the, I'm just going to assume 2 hours because it's
something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, thank you to Tech Catalyst and Sean here, and I believe that about wraps it up.
I believe so. Shout out to Supernova, could not make it with us here tonight.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's everything here, and it's a second episode of the Black Light Tavern. But we'll be back as soon as we can.
As soon as we can. And all right, and the tavern is officially closed. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Good night, people.
Gotta get the hell up out of here.